Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to the Thinkers and Doers podcast. Today's our third episode, which is really exciting. And, I sat down to talk to Anna. She's a very mindful creator. She's actually a mindfulness and yoga teacher. And I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed talking to her. It was just such a pleasure. She's just so chatty, and I could just, talk to her for hours. So enjoy the episode. And by the way, if you want to check out any of the other episodes, just go to projectnuno.substack.com, or alternatively check out my YouTube channel, Project Nuno. And if you want to support my content and you like the stuff that you're listening to and watching, just if you give it a like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye. Hello, everybody. This is another episode of Thinkers and Doers. I am so thrilled to have Anna here with me. She's an aspiring creator, and she's a mindfulness professional, someone whom I have a lot of fun with whenever we interact in our crazy creative group meetings, and we exchange, I think, some visionary feedback, and we give each other a lot of support. And so it's for me a delight to have her here, because I think she could be, I don't know, just someone so fascinating to talk to. But with no further ado, Anna, how are you today? And thank you so much for accepting to come on.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Thank you. So, Anna, I would love to just to kind of introduce the listeners a little bit, to who you are, to your trajectory. Tell us a little bit about, about you. And I just want to kind of mention, I live in the south of Spain, where you are actually from, in a magical place called California, because of that California vibe that it has. And yet you chose to move to a rather cold and grey place, not all the time. Tell us a little bit about that and about that process.
Yeah. So I'm living in Amsterdam, here in the Netherlands, at the heart of Europe. And You're right, I didn't come here for the food nor for the weather. That was definitely not the case. But before I moved here, I was doing a PhD in England. And when I finished my PhD in political science and sociology, I wanted to move to the Netherlands because I know their universities are really good. I had worked here before, and I got the chance to do a postdoc. So that's how I ended up here.
Okay, wow. That's fascinating to me, because I'm also, I also have a social sciences background. So I didn't actually know that you'd studied political science. I knew you were like doing a PhD and kind of thinking about taking the academic route. But then, of course, life happens, and things don't go as you plan initially, right? As you expect them to go. What were you researching anyway in your and then what were you researching at the time, and then going to Amsterdam?
Yeah, for me to answer that question, I would like to give you just a brief background. I have a degree in social work and sociology, and then I did a master's on international migration and social cohesion, focusing mostly on Europe. So when I finally got my grant to do my PhD in England, I wanted to combine a little bit politics with sociology and identity. So I study political participation at the European level with European identity. And all of this in the midst of Brexit happening. So it was really, really a heated topic and research. Yeah.
Wow. Are you still kind of following that up somehow? Are you kind of well, I imagine that you're still interested in all of that. That's like another whole sort of dimension if we go that way. But are you still sort of paying attention to what is going on?
I keep an eye on it, but to be honest, and this is a little bit painful for me to say, I kind of ran away from England. I felt it was a really toxic environment for me. When I was there, they were debating about the referendum, then the elections took place, and then the aftermath. And it was probably the first time, because obviously I have an accent. English is not my mother tongue. And after the EU referendum elections, it was the first time that I felt a foreigner, that I did not belong. People really, trying to hear, where is she coming from? Are you Romanian? Are you Spanish? It was really, really tense. So my heart and, all of that is still resides in me, but I don't really, I'm not as actively checking the news and following up as I used to.
God, it's just so like uncanny actually to me that that you have all this interest as well in international migrations and particularly in Europe. I have too, and I'm actually living, in a place where, as you know, it's actually a point of entry to many migrants, and I have been very lucky to sort of participate in some local initiatives and actually have some firsthand contact with what is going on. That is definitely a massive subject, but it's interesting that that is actually so close to home in a sense for you, and you're kind of out there studying these things kind of on a different level. And then suddenly you are now in Amsterdam, right? So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So while I was here during my first year of my postdoc, I got severely burned out to the point that I stopped radically, and it took me like a year and a half to recover. By that time, my postdoc contract had ended, and I wasn't really sure that I belonged to academia anymore. Even, it was a really tough decision and painful decision to make, because I had spent my whole career focusing on research and academia and teaching and all of that. So it really was very painful. But at some point, and it's funny because I was a European identity expert, at some point I thought, I can shed my academic identity and it's okay, because I felt it was really toxic environment, highly competitive. You're never good enough, never. There's always another article, another research, another publication around the corner for you to read or for you to create and process. So I thought, maybe there could be things that if I stay in academia, I could change. But overall, in my personality, I had to be honest with myself. And I thought, I'm going to get sick again if I return. So this is not it. And what could I do instead? And in the meantime, when I was really ill, and by this I mean like not being able to sleep, having nightmares, I kept dreaming of my students, feeling guilty. I kept thinking, I'm gonna meet other colleagues on the street, they're gonna see I'm okay and think, what is she doing, and things like that. So in that healing and recovering process, yoga and mindfulness were bedrocks for me. They were really my pillars. And in fact, I also tried to do some therapy, like standard psychology therapy, and it didn't work out. And also the waiting lists were really, really terrifying. 6 months waiting list, and when you're so in need, it's a long time to wait, half a year, right?
Absolutely.
And mindfulness, I found a program online, and then I decided to become a teacher and use mindfulness for stress and anxiety relief, because I really had to get myself so well when I was in that mentality of being stressed and everything is going to end and what should I do, that I decide, I do really know this topic very well, and I have that sensitivity and that patience. Why not becoming a mindfulness trainer and a yoga teacher? And that's what I did.
Oh, so good. God, we were saying before, weren't we, that the stuff that happens to us is often an initiation, right? The stuff that we don't want to, the obstacles and all of this, they're actually, they have their own jewel, their own lesson, right? And so nobody arrives in mindfulness just because everything is going hunky-dory and people think, I'm just gonna try it. Even though I have to say, mindfulness as a term, it has become a very popular term with some marketing attached to it, right? In the world of like the word, like coaching, like other words that are popular these days. Exactly. And it's funny because mindfulness as a concept from what, and I want you to help me clarify this. I mean, for me, obviously, well, I think what everybody understands is mindfulness is, a more direct contact with the present moment, with the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, what you're telling me is that mindfulness was a more direct route into your own healing as well, right? Not having to wait for therapy, or not having to wait for the process of therapy as well, even if you had started therapy right away, because conventional therapy is not known to be a relatively fast process, right? People spend years and years sometimes, and all of that. So what's your, in a sense, what is mindfulness for you, right? What is your concept of it? But also, what is your experience of it? What is your unique kind of experience of this big umbrella term?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I'm really glad that you asked that, because actually one of the things that appealed me the most about mindfulness is this takeoff in science as well, and all this research backing up the effects, the positive effects of mindfulness in your well-being, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, mindfulness, I don't take that spiritual, neither do I with yoga, of chakras, which is okay, but it's not my style, it's not what I do. And with mindfulness, I do also keep it very science-based, even when I give it my personal touch, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And mindfulness for me, it's a superpower. No, it really is. And it's not always a good superpower. Sometimes it's a shitty one, if I may say, because it really puts you in the face of the truth, in quotation marks, your truth, even when sometimes that is unpleasant, but it's being able to pay attention to the present moment. And if you're being judgmental, to be aware of that, and at least strive for not judging everything that crosses your path. That is a really powerful thing and quality and skill to learn, because that is the difference between just becoming, I have this grumpy pumpy that I are like a label for a part of, sometimes I become really impulsive and reactive, and I always deeply regret it. Not even once that I said, oh, I'm so happy, I just vomited my emotional stuff to someone I love dearly, right? No. I mean, nothing good comes out of that. But with mindfulness, I have learned and trained and practiced a lot, even nowadays. And that has helped me to create some distance between that reaction, that need, and that urge of just lashing out, and taking, one meaningful deep breath and say, okay, I cannot handle this right now. Can we talk some other time? Something that maybe didn't even cross my mind in the past. If I'm having a heated conversation, I just want to get it done, fix everything, resolve, whatever. But now it's like, I notice I don't have the capacity to deal with this. I'm feeling really angry. I want to, yell. I want to run, whatever. So why not take some of the time to deal with this? And I have managed to get to that point thanks to mindfulness.
Oh, God, there's just so much to unpack there, in everything that you just said. I mean, first of all, like on a global scale, I mean, there is so much, let's say, anger and reactivity and all of an impulse and all of those things in the air, stuff that sometimes belongs to us and sometimes it really doesn't. It's just kind of in the air and we're breathing into it. And as long as we're like, in touch with other people and living in this world, right? And there's so much polarity, so many different opinions, people not respecting each other's opinions or differences and all of that. So would you say, so I mean, when you, from your description, right, I get that mindfulness is a tool for impulse control, but I don't even like that word controlled so much, because it's not like, okay, I'm controlling. No, it's like you ease into a practice that sort of sustains your impulse and kind of helps you to integrate that impulse back into your own wholeness, into your own totality, right? Because when we're like under the effect or at the mercy of just, impulses or appetites or whatever, it's like, it's very fragmenting, right? we do this, then we do that. It's kind of very scattering. So I find that not just from what you're telling me, but also from my own experience, that when I try to get mindful, there's like a coming back home, a returning to a sense of wholeness or wholesomeness, for lack of a better word. And I want to ask you, would you say, because you mentioned judgment, right? That sometimes, of course, we get reactive. I think it's human. Would you say that mindfulness is kind of like a bridge between that allows you to go from judgment to discernment, where you can still perceive, still have that particular opinion about certain things, and you discern what is going on, but you just don't have that urge to jump into judgment, right? So that is in itself a superpower, right? That ability to not, as you said, to just not just vomit, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're...
I would say so. At least we have that capacity, but it doesn't mean that we will reach that end point. And what I mean by that, mindfulness already can help you even become aware that you're just being reactive, even when you couldn't, quotation marks, help yourself. It just happened. And that's a little bit what these automatic behaviors feel like. But and this connects actually with when I work with my clients, I focus on mindfulness as a habit. It's a mental habit, like brushing your teeth, but in the mind. And in that sense, that's why, like many times you pass through this, bakery and you're not hungry, but you like the croissants and you just bite, you cannot help it. In that sense, when you react and you slash out emotionally, it feels a little bit like that. Like it's something that, it just goes automatically. So definitely we can have that capacity to discern that. I'm going to be very, clear on that. It should not be an end goal, because all you can be mindful in the whole process of, one day being more careful with what you say or how you behave, and another day just feeling like you're out of control, and that's okay. So it's the whole process is what really mindfulness brings the focus to.
I love that. And I'll tell you why. Because what you're telling me is that perfection is not the goal. And like we should know from the outset, you know what, we're never going to get perfect. So let's not even focus too much on that, because that's like, it's like the carrot that we're never kind of get to, in a sense. So it's just something, and it would be a projection as well, right? It's like, oh, one day it will be. I mean, of course, it's finding that balance, isn't it? Of like striving to be better, but at the same time, accepting, embracing where you are right now, and finding that balance. So I love that. And I was going to say something, but I forgot.
Great.
You
can be mindful about that.
Right. No, I know, because you mentioned croissants, and I thought, oh my God, you mentioned precisely one of my weaknesses. I need a lot of mindfulness, right? If I'm going past a cake shop or a croissant shop or whatever, like a patisserie or something like this. I mean, like, and sometimes the most mindful thing I can do, if I'm honest, is to actually eat the croissant, but eat the croissant mindfully, and sort of turn it into a choice, into a conscious choice, and accept that, what, right this moment, I'm not prepared to sacrifice my appetite for this delicious croissant, and I'm going to have it mindfully, but I'm going to have one, I'm not going to have three. And that makes a lot of difference as well, right? It's kind of sort of suppressing that restless desire for more, and never being satisfied. It's actually, I find that is very that brings me peace when I take that kind of.
I can imagine, and it actually resonates a lot with me, because for me, I said mindfulness is a superpower, but mindfulness is also, for me, equals freedom, because when I'm aware, then I can choose. If I'm reactive, if I'm in the automatic mode, whatever, just falling into my old, uncomfortable patterns, am I really choosing what I want to do? Am I really being aware of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm eating? So even like you said, it's not about depriving yourself. Of course not. It's more about knowing, okay, I really have the urge to buy that croissant, and I want it now. So maybe your body really wants that croissant or whatever, and you just want to have it, but you are aware, and it's your choice. It's not, the decision is not being made for you. You're actually stepping in with that. Even if you notice you feel guilty because you think, oh, there's so many calories, but also you might feel pleasure because it's so tasty, of that butter melting in your tongue,
Exactly. I mean, and now these days, talking about croissants seems kind of harmless, really, because if you think about other types of, I'm going to call it addictions, but like social media, for example, that you think, well, I'm just going to check one thing, and then suddenly half an hour is gone, and you were not even aware of that, and you were just mindlessly consuming. But anyway, there are so many people talking about this, so we all know, and like we all kind of experienced this in one way or another. I have to say that I think if you're, I think I would have struggled a little bit more with that if that had caught me at a younger age. I think I would have struggled, like way more potentially. And one of the things as well that that you were saying that made me think, when you said it's a practice, because now I find that there's a lot of in the personal development sphere, a lot of people that talk about awakening, and they talk about that as like an event. Something happened, I wasn't awake, but now I am. And usually that doesn't resonate with me at all, because I think, well, sometimes one day I'm more awake, the next day I'm like back in the depths of, darkness. And the next day after that, I'm awake again. So and then like it's a practice, right? We do live in a world of polarity that kind of constantly sort of takes us out of our center. But with this kind of practice, at least what this allows us to is to return to the center a lot more, I don't want to say quickly, but a lot more kind of I'm going to say quickly, as in like not be out there lost completely, like
you
for
become a little bit more agile. I don't know.
more agile. Love that, of course.
But you have a faster reaction to, whatever.
Yeah, the reason I didn't want to say fast is because like everything nowadays is about speed and being fast and react, and mindfulness is like that. Oh, okay, I'm going to be mindful now. It's not, that's not the energy. That's why I didn't want to say faster. It's actually, I'm going to be faster in slowing down. So that's what it is. And I want to ask you, why do you think, or do you notice that there is a certain receptiveness now to mindfulness, way bigger than there ever was? When you talk about mindfulness nowadays, people kind of know what you're talking about, right? I would say that our parents' generations would certainly not know. So, is it a generational thing? Do you think what's going on? What is the process here that you find? I'm not asking you for like a big theory, but just in your own practice, what is it that you find that people are thirsty for or looking for? Yeah.
Honestly, I think there are two main things. One is that the research and science has taken interest on it, and they're proving that there is quite benefit on practicing. So they detach, right, these spiritual, religious colors from mindfulness, for good or for bad. That's for others to judge. But I think that really made an impact and then because of that, as a consequence, I believe they have better marketing, because now you don't need to burn incense and buy candles and cross your legs in a perfect lotus position. You can just download, take a nap, go to the park, sit in a bench, and just do your best to stay mindful. So I definitely see that leap, as opposed to before, that it was really you said meditation, and most of people immediately thought about India and ashrams and gurus and things like that, and that's not the case anymore, to the point. And this I was listening to a podcast. This was years ago, but I was really shocked when I heard that in the military system in the US, they use mindfulness to train their staff because they have seen the positive impact that it has also on your focus, on making the right quotation marks decision and things like that. So I thought, wow, if the militaries are using it, like this is really huge, because you would never have imagined, at least not in my head, that would be possible.
Wow.
So I think those two things definitely have been a game changer.
Wow, that's incredible about the military using them. It's amazing, really. I have to say, me personally, but as you said, this is for another debate or for another podcast, not for now. I feel, let's say, partly conflicted with this idea of people using either mindfulness or yoga to be honest, like sort of in a completely detached way from the original traditions in which these things were born, because there is a reason. No, I don't want to say reason. There's an understanding. I think there's a deep spiritual, ancient, understanding that there are certain things that are the workings of the human soul, and that we don't deal with them necessarily. And I'm going to be careful here. Necessarily with pills or necessarily with quicker means. There are certain ailments of the soul, or dark nights of the soul, or whatever, certain afflictions that are actually very much part of human nature, human despair, the night side, let's say, of human life. And so for me, on the one hand, I find it a little bit sad that to see this being used completely removed from those contexts. But on the other hand, I still think it's preferable to use them anyway, even if it's removed from that original context, because because I trust that somehow the practice itself will lead to a more to greater openness towards those contexts as well. But this is like a big thing, and it's another big debate.
May I ask, if you don't mind, is it because you feel that it might be lost, that knowledge, or that or is it something else?
Well, for example, it was not until fairly recently, and I'm kind of interested in these subjects, I have been for a long time, but it was not until fairly recently that I understood that yoga is actually not the physical exercises that you do in a yoga class. It's everything else. That is just a part of, so the meditating, the praying, that is just as important, if not more, part of the yogi practice. But people kind of like pick and choose, I want this, I don't want that, or whatever, which is part of a, let's say, consumerist kind of way of doing things, right? But I don't want to judge that either, because I think we're not I think it would be also a mistake to expect that people in the West would be doing things in the exact same way that they would be doing in India or in other places. So I don't want to judge anyone here. On the contrary, I actually think, people are trying and people are exploring different avenues, and things are what they are. So, but I love it at the same time, actually, because I think, in those, like in the context of a yoga class, in the context of a mindfulness practice, you actually have a different way of being together with people, because people don't go to church anymore, so they don't congregate, that sense of congregation, of being together socially, but not really socially, because it's not like being in a bar or whatever. It's completely different. So I find that even in the workplace, I find that there is an openness now, because human resources departments understand that if people if their employees are happier, they can do better business and all of those things. And and in the world of business on the whole, I find that people want to do business with healthy people, actually. So they're kind of much more open now, I find, to implementing these types of practices. It's still not perceived as the true investment that it is, with the amazing results that it really has. But I think the most innovative companies, they've caught on. I don't know. What's your view on that? Do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only that, you know, if your workers and employees are happier, they will be more productive. Is that if they go on for long periods with chronic stress or chronic anxiety, they get burnout, then that's really costly. That's really pricey for a company to pay for their leave, to bring someone new, to train that person and have that spot filled. So it's also about preventing and detecting that you are actually in chronic stress mode, and that still there is a little bit of a shift that needs to take place in the companies, because there are a lot of well-being packages, but sometimes it's just, you know, to maintain or to keep a habit that you already have, like with discounts at gym memberships and things like that. But what about detect? What about really being aware that you're being, you know, stressed out, and not just for one deadline in one project, but for months and months? And what about training staff, managerial staffs, to be really sensitive about this? Because I also, when I was at the brink of my burnout, I shared this, and it's so normalized that you're stressed and you have such a high workload that it goes unnoticed. And it was not until I was, you know, crying in someone's office saying, I cannot go to work tomorrow, I cannot do this anymore, that someone thought, okay, maybe she has something going on with her, right? So that is also my hope. And I really believe that there will be this revolution taking more mindfulness and other well-being tools. It doesn't have to be just mindfulness, to prevent and to empower people to know what's their mental inner weather, what is going on, and how they can actually deal with that within the company or also outside in their personal life.
God, you know, I mean, it is crazy because picking up on everything that you've just said, you know, actually people are very reluctant to admit that they are burning out, right?
Yeah.
They usually only admit it when they just kind of can't take it anymore. Again, one of the terms that I came across some time ago that I thought was such a good description is high functioning anxiety. So people, or when you say that people, this is I think it was a writer who said this, but I can't remember, you know, when people are living lives of quiet desperation, right? So people are like really having a hard time, and but they're kind of they feel that it puts them in a very vulnerable place to mention it, because there's still so much, I don't know, prejudice or whatever around anything mental health kind of related. And people don't want to open up about that. They feel they're kind of like the only ones. And actually, they're not the only ones. And more people are noticing that they're not the only ones, and that this has got to be addressed. And I think actually it would be fascinating to have your perspective. Maybe it's also a topic for another podcast, but, you know, I certainly think that companies would benefit from your input in terms of thinking of mindfulness as a tool for well-being. And now that we have in many companies this system of this hybrid system where people work both at home and in the office, and I feel that companies are kind of not sure yet if this is something to stay or not. Some, you know, they concede that it might be an option for long term. Others, you know, are realizing that actually this is not the way to go. I think it's kind of still largely undecided. I don't know if you have an opinion on that or not, in terms of the association between that and mindfulness. If you want to say something quickly about that.
I'm not sure I understood fully. You mean about the remote work and home work?
You know, one of the things that a lot of workers now are experiencing, right, is a different way of working, because they They can stay at home a few days of the week. They can take their kids to school or whatever, or be at home a little bit more. And I think that for the most part, they like it, right? They like this. Not they might miss the office as well, and they appreciate that it's important as well to socialize with their people. And I know that this is a very big subject, but I'm wondering if when it comes to leading a more mindful life, right? So articulating mindfulness, well-being, do you think that it doesn't matter so much as long as, because mindfulness, you could just apply it anywhere you are? Or do you think that actually, this system could encourage people to be a little bit more mindful?
I'm a little bit torn about that question, to be honest, because my expertise lies in remote work. So I do mostly teach online. And one of the things, although at the beginning, I will admit it was a little bit awkward for me and for the participants, because, it's new and you get so much input when you're sharing the context as opposed to when you're online. But one of the things that I found really powerful is that you can participate as a whole group from the same company anonymously with me, because I also ask participants about their stress or their anxiety. And I don't know the power dynamics that might be going on within a specific group. So it's really powerful that they can just send me a message and I can read it to the whole group. Or if they don't want to read it, they just can share that with me while they're at work. So that's a way in which I try to integrate a little bit of mindfulness in their routine when they're at work.
Okay. Oh, wow. All right. Okay, fantastic. Now, moving on a little bit, I also wanted to ask you, because, it was in that context that we met each other. We are both, let's say, creators or aspiring creators or whatever. Tell me a little bit about that. Does that feel expansive to you? Is that, you kind of allowing people to learn more about the practice? Tell us a little bit about your creative endeavors.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I actually, most of the times I really enjoy creating, but there are other times that it's a little bit difficult, and that I particularly thinking about promoting and sharing what you have done. That I
We're
find
talking
a little
about
bit
creating videos, right? In
yeah,
this case.
videos, or if I create, because I'm actually on the process of sharing a lot of what I do in social media, but combining with watercolor painting, because I've discovered that recently and I really like it. And I'm not a professional, I'm not good, whatever, whatever good means in each other's minds. And that I really enjoy, that creative process and the process of getting lost and finding my narrative and trying to, when I'm really happy with it and to the point that I share it, that brings a lot of pleasure. But the whole algorithm and, this addiction that you mentioned before, either YouTube or social media, I'm really so against it at so many levels. So sometimes I find myself in this contradiction, because I know I'm contributing with my content to that somehow, to keep more eyes on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook. And that really, makes me feel uncomfortable. So I hope that at least with what I do, I'm adding value. That's really important to me, that what I share is meaningful, either with a yoga class or with my latest video with the imposter syndrome or something like that. So yeah, it varies for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know what you mean. I think of it kind of as a vehicle, like literally as a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also don't feel particularly, let's say, joyful that I'm driving, and I love driving, but that me driving a car, that I'm also somehow contributing. But I mean, but we've got to move as well, right? So it's kind of finding that balance. At least if what you're creating is something that you believe is of quality and you're putting your heart and soul into it, and it's a creative practice, right? So would you say that the creative practice itself is an experience of mindfulness, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, most of the times I will admit sometimes I get a little bit carried away, and then I look back and I think, oh, this is not really what I wanted to share. But most of the times it is. It definitely is, because I also get, I don't, not necessarily a writer's block, but I get blocked sometimes. I'm thinking, okay, and how do I do this? And then I end up in this rabbit hole of the how to things. There are endless tutorials about how to, but you need to go and do it at some point, right? so so with that, I also try to be very mindful with myself and compassionate. That also helps to just say, okay, you're not an expert, you're still always a student, even with a PhD and everything. I don't want to stop learning. So how can I do this in the most sustainable way for me? Because as someone who recovered from a burnout, that's also something that is always there, that my mental and physical health is priority, top priority. So with that, sometimes, as you can always have a video or a post or a podcast to create. And it's important to be mindful of that and say, okay, now I need a break, or I need to put some distance and come back to it some other time.
You just nailed it. And when you said the word sustainable, I mean, that is precisely the word, right? You're tapping into that paradigm now of sustainability, right? That I think it's here to stay, and for us to tap into kind of even more. And I don't think it's going anywhere, right? Because we can see that it's good for us, and it's good for everybody, and it's good for the planet, and it's good for
that's it. Because if you're feeling good, then everybody benefits from that. Like even to my worst enemies, I don't really have any, but I wish them the best, because I know even if I don't like you, if you're feeling good, that's going to have a good impact, a positive impact on everyone around you. So why wouldn't I like that for myself and for others,
Absolutely. And on that note, Anna, I want to ask you, because this just occurred to me. It wasn't actually on my mind earlier. But would you say that are you in the mood right now to gift our listeners with a mindfulness experience right this moment, and we could kind of close the session with that? Would that be, yeah? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be amazing. So everyone get ready for this. I'm also like I'm all ears, and I'm totally willing to be guided into this. So
great. So I will do like a couple of minutes. How does that sound?
That is just
okay.
perfect.
So if someone that has never tried, they feel like, okay, 2 minutes I can handle.
Fantastic. All right.
Okay, great. Then
Shall I close
make
my
sure
eyes?
that you. No, you can keep them open or closed. That's completely up to you. But if they're open, I will advise you don't really look at me. Just soften your gaze. Look something in front of you without really paying attention to the visual stimuli. Okay, and just check in with yourself. Do you feel comfortable? Are there any adjustments that you need to do right now? Maybe rolling your shoulders, or just, oh, my neck just cracked, or whatever. And just sometimes when my mind is really busy, I actually appreciate it a lot, anchoring in the body. So I'm gonna ask you to check in with your body. What's their energy right now? How are you feeling right now? And just keep that answer to yourself. You can tell me later, but this is a moment of introspection, just within, connecting. Maybe you feel some tension in some areas, or you actually feel chilled and relaxed. Just noticing. And then it's also very interesting to connect with the different temperatures that take place in the body. So would you be willing to find the hottest, the warmest spot in your body right now? Again, just checking in. Where does it feel the warmest? And maybe it's in your hands, maybe your mouth, the armpits, behind the knees. And then let's check with the opposite. Where do you feel the coldest right now in your body? And it doesn't have to be that cold, freezing sensation, but just if you compare with the warmest, where does it feel cold? Maybe it's the tip of your nose. That's a classic spot. Or maybe your elbows. Just be really curious. And just before we finish this quick practice, if it feels comfortable, if you feel fine with it, then just notice, how does breathing feel right now in your body? This is a classic anchor, a classic point of attention, the breath. And noticing, are there any differences between the in-breath and the out-breath, or do they feel the same? And whenever you're ready, you can just wrap it up. And well done. You practice for a couple of minutes.
Wow.
How are you feeling, Nuno?
Man, I feel good. Yeah. Oh,
Yay!
I mean, wow, it just goes to show, and I'm kind of used to this, but not in this guided fashion. And I love it, actually. I mean, it's just so different, isn't it? It's two different experiences when you meditate on your own, or to actually have a guidance such as yours. For me, this was so precious because it was very I don't know, there was a very kind of earthy quality to it, very grounding.
Yeah.
I loved the hot, the cold. I felt very warm in my chest, a little bit cold in my arms, tip of
Nice.
my nose, as you said. It was so good. So thank you so much, Anna. I want to say that I really appreciate you, and appreciate your work, appreciate your visionary feedback that you give every time that we meet to talk about all things creativity. I appreciate as well the struggles of keeping up with this kind of thing. It's not easy. There's a lot of resistance. This is not like being or choosing to exercise one of the more typical professions that people recognize and a bit more clear cut. What you're doing is that you are treading an unknown path that it has not been done. It has not been done before, right? And I just want to appreciate you for doing that, because it's just so necessary and not just necessary, it's just so much fun, to be honest. It's a different way of living life, isn't it? You notice things more and you feel more alive, and we're here for a period of time, so let's make the most of it. Is there anything that you want to add, anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, actually, there is. If you enjoy the practice, you can find some free resources on my site.
I was going to get to that. Perfect. Okay.
I created 3 very short meditations, mindfulness meditations for people I put it to practice at work because they last 3 minutes. So it's just like a mindfulness break, but you can actually practice them anywhere, obviously. So I just want to leave that out there. They're for anyone who wants them. They're free. So just come and get them.
I know who's going to jump to your website, and that's going to be me for sure, at least. Do you want to just say it, where people can find you, and
yes,
leave the link as well? But yeah,
you share it, right? Because it's a little bit, I'm dyslexic, so I always struggle with the spelling and all of this. So it's www.yoganasanas.com/English, because I have a bilingual website. So English is where you'll find your stuff.
Fantastic. Anna, I wish you all the very best with your wonderful bilingual business and initiatives. Thank you so much once again for coming on. This was our first podcast together, but probably not the last. So, looking forward to catching up. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for listening, for tuning in. There'll be more coming next week, but for the time being, take a look at the links below as well and enjoy Anna's wonderful mindfulness practices. All the best, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. So are you sure you want to stop recording? Yes.